Okay, take it away.
All right, so welcome everyone to the Fortuna Chamber of Commerce Monday Zoom meeting. And Mike is going to lead us today at the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, thank you. And please begin. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty. Justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Do we have any new members or guests that would like to introduce themselves?
I'm your guest today, Dana Boudreau with the Redwood Coast Energy Authority.
Welcome, Dana.
Thank you.
We've got Katie.
I'm
Put
Katie.
her on the spot.
I'm in the Community Development Department of the City of Fortuna.
Welcome, Katie.
I see her on the Planning Commission meetings.
Anybody else? All right, so I'll turn it back over to you, Renee, for chamber announcements.
Okay, next Monday, December 7th, we will have Ryan Johnson. He is the Employment Outreach Coordinator for the Diane Cathy Center's Breaking Barriers program. Sorry, I had to think about what word I was looking for. Ryan will give a talk about customized employment opportunities for developmentally or intellectually disabled adults. What else do we have? The Al Gray Electric Lighted Parade is going on December 11th. They have changed the route a little bit, so check out the map at fortunabusiness.com. There's still time to enter. There will be some changes. You'll need to stay in your vehicle and things like that for COVID safety. You can get more information on the parade from Diana at FBID. Of course, the big news that we've been sharing all last week is we're doing a citywide holiday decorating contest called Holiday Dazzle. Get out your jazz hands. Very excited about that. That's the City of Fortuna, the Chamber, and the Fortuna Kiwanis Club all came together to do that. It's open to all businesses and residences in Fortuna. We have six prize levels, over $3,000 to give away. The businesses can win one of three prizes, $500, $250, or $100, and residences can win either $1,000, $750, or $500. There will be a public vote, so you can twist the arms of all your friends and family to vote for you. That'll start December 14th. The deadline to enter your house or business is December 13th. You will need to upload a completed decorated photo with your submission. If you want, you can take it right at dusk or before. Obviously, it would be best to take it with your lights on so we can see them. But if you have a lot of intricate displays, feel free to post a photo with your entry during the daytime. That's fine too. Let's see what else. Oh, Umpqua. Apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Claus are coming to Umpqua Bank. That's exciting. December 12th, Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. Santa and Mrs. Claus will be in the drive-through window at Umpqua Bank. They will be the only two in the bank, and they will be communicating with children through the drive-through window microphone and the window deposit tray thingamabobby, which we haven't fully decided on what it's actually called, so we're just going to call it a tray. So the kids can safely put their letters to Santa in the deposit tray, and then Santa can have a few minutes to speak with them and give them back a candy cane. So everybody will be safe. We'll have little elves by the name of Becky, Renee, Melissa, and a few others. Kristen, I believe, will be another elf who will be helping. And the City of Fortuna graciously donated a couple of staff to help us with crowd control. So we have no idea if we're going to have 7 people or 70. So hopefully we'll have enough candy canes and we'll have some kids come out to see Santa. So mark your calendar for that, 2 Saturdays from now, December 12th. And I think that's those are all my announcements for now. Oh, and you can check your mailboxes in a couple of days for our next quarterly printed newsletter. That should be in mailboxes by Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And do we have any announcements from any members today? Becky? No. Oh. Anybody? All right. Then if not, I will go ahead and introduce our featured speaker today, Dana Boudreau. Gosh, dang it. I did it so much better the first time.
Boudreau.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority. Dana, the floor is all yours, and I apologize.
No worries. And thank you for having me. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. Not sure how to get everybody's happy faces off of the screen, so we'll just leave you for now, unless anybody has Zoom tips they would want to share. I'm going to mostly focus on the transportation elements, since that's what I lead at RCEA, but I'm also going to give a brief on some of the other ones, other programs that we do. And then I'm suggesting that later in the spring, as we roll out some of our other programs, that we have some other staffers come back and give you an update on those activities. So we'll be pretty heavy on transportation today. And then I'm going to try to just blast through a lot of this content, get through the dry subject first so that we can get to your questions, which is going to be more interesting. So it'll be first just an overview of our goals, a history of what we've done to date, some of the current activities we're working on, what's coming over the horizon, and then we'll go into some of our other RCEA programs. So to start, why do we look at transportation? A big focus for us is really looking at decarbonization. Climate change from a scientific perspective is real. So we're a science-based organization, and that's our stance. And within that, transportation is roughly half the problem. So if we're going to try to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, then we really have to focus on transportation. This is a relatively new area for RCEA. We've been working on it a little bit since about 2012, and funding is slow to go. We're a vehicle-centric society, so that's a very challenging thing to change over time. So it's a lot of work ahead of us. But as we can see from these charts here, fossil fuels are the big hitters when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Our goals locally are to get about 6,000 electric vehicles on the road by 2025 and 22,000 electric vehicles by 2030. To support that, we need infrastructure. So we're also working to develop public, workplace, and residential charging infrastructure. And I don't have hard numbers on that, although I can get back to folks if they have specific interest in that. Also to work with our local public entities to reduce vehicle miles traveled at least 25% by 2030. And that's kind of an interesting challenge, because that pretty much covers all walks of life, how we design our buildings, where we place our homes and our businesses. So really trying to evaluate, there's very little that RCEA can do specifically around that. Which is why we have to rely heavily on other public entities to look at ways we can restructure our communities to reduce our overall greenhouse gas emissions. And then the main goal is by 2030, reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation by about 65% or more. And a lot of that, it's a series of things, because we're going to have to iterate towards success here. It's just reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled, improve vehicle efficiency, look to biofuels such as biodiesel as a transition fuel, and then aim to eliminate the use of fossil fuels by 2050. At the state level, our governor kind of beat us to the punch, and this year announced by 2035 to ban the sale of new fossil fuel vehicles. So this is, as Newsom has stated, this is a dream with some goals attached to it. So it's no hard and fast rules, but really it's trying to provide, the state's trying to provide industry direction to society at large that this is where the state wants to move. So that means the end of sales of new fossil fuel powered vehicles. Of course, we'll still have all the vehicles on the road today, as well as any new vehicles that move in from other states, as well as the used vehicle sales. There's also the obvious need for a just transition, because we have so many businesses wrapped around new car sales and who are currently invested in fossil fuel infrastructure. So we really have to take that into consideration at the state level. Part of that is to build out statewide rail and transit networks and to support multimodal transit like bicycles, pedestrians, and micromobility, AKA skateboards with electric skateboards. Watch the sidewalks. And then also really looking at accessible and safe infrastructure, which is a trick for a rural setting because we're spread out and our roads can be narrow and it can be difficult to combine a bunch of different forms of transportation on the road. So what does this mean? Well, we've got to revisit our 2050 targets because this really accelerates our local goals if we're going to try to keep step with the state as a whole. So can we do 6,000 EVs, electric vehicles in Humboldt by 2025? This slide just kind of gives us an idea of where we are today. We've got about 1,300 on the road. It's a mix of about 40% pure battery electric and about, those numbers don't add up. Sorry, I grabbed this from the state. I'll have to talk to them about their numbers. It's actually about 60% plug-in hybrid and 40% battery electric. And it's been consistent for the past 8 years or so. Sorry for not proofreading their slide for you folks. And you can see at the bottom that we saw quite a curve up and then things flattened out. It's kind of interesting too, if you think about how we had the recession and there was a little bit of a knock-on effect from that and some recovery. But now we've come into the pandemic, which has really softened sales and adoption of new technology. The good news is that there is still technology development happening in the background. So 2021 should start to see a real resurgence, but it's gonna delay us a little bit in our rollout. And the California state map here on the right, you can see that we're pretty much keeping up with the rest of the state as far as getting vehicles on the road. Clearly the metropolitan areas are well ahead of us, but for being a rural area, and you can't really tell here, but this blue is ever so slightly darker than the rest of the region around us. So we're actually doing pretty well in our adoption rate. So for our projects to date, a lot of it has been kind of on the governmental planning side of things. We've done a readiness project, basically where do we put the infrastructure, how much of it do we need? Then we started building out the electric vehicle network, so we implemented some of that plan. And now we have a fully operational charging network operating from Trinidad to Willow Creek down to Rio Dell. So all of that work is kind of iterating nicely forward. We've also started to look at fuel cell vehicles, which is just another way of saying hydrogen. Hydrogen has some interesting benefits as far as fuel density and weight are involved compared to batteries. And it also plays really nicely with the existing liquid fuel delivery system. So a lot of fuel operators would be very happy to be able to have just an alternate fuel that they can provide rather than shifting to a whole new technology or delivery mechanism, which electricity requires. So that gives it a competitive opportunity in the marketplace, and we like to see multiple choices, not just one. And we're also working on alternative fuels, looking a little more broadly across the region, because we've got large trucks that have to roll through rural roads. There's a lot of temperature change. There's a lot of gradients across the land. Electricity doesn't necessarily get you as far as you would like if you're having to cross mountains. So you gain it all back on the downhill, but it certainly takes a lot to get you uphill. And that's again where a liquid fuel may have benefit. There may be some options for biomass as well. Just give you a little bit of a highlight on our charging network. It's available to the public 24/7. We operate and maintain all of the stations. You can see on the map here, again, we go from Trinidad, Willow Creek, Rio Dell. Try to cover the whole territory. The original goal was really to eliminate range anxiety for people feeling like, hey, am I going to be able to get home if I go visit one of these outlying areas? So range anxiety is pretty much taken care of now that vehicles have more range. Now this just gives better convenience, an opportunity to charge when you're out in the wild doing your shopping and so on. So this becomes an attractor actually, or a commercial benefit. And certain sites like our Old Town and downtown Arcata see really high utilization because they have great location. So just something to keep into consideration for business districts is opportunities where we can place chargers. The nice thing here is that we're a government agency. We're not for profit, so we actually subsidize our station costs a little bit for the public because we want to keep it at a price parity with liquid fuels so that it will not cost any more and hopefully cost less to charge rather than fueling up with fossil fuels to, again, help accelerate the adoption of the new technology. And just focusing on the southern end of our network, we've got a station, 2 ports at City Hall. There's 7 ports at the new Open Door Clinic, opened up 18 months ago. There's a station at 4th Street parking in Ferndale and also at Wildwood Avenue in Rio Dell. So that's actually pretty good for out in the sticks. And if you have other locations that you're curious about, please let's talk. It takes a lot of time to get a new station in, mostly because of ADA. And also just it's tricky to tap into power in certain locations. So it's expensive and we need to plan in advance, but do let us know if you've got some good sites. Excuse me. We're also working to keep everybody informed on Cal Green, the building code. Not really straightforward for a rural setting to be able to adopt a lot of the state level mandates. A lot of times it's considered unfunded mandate, but we want to make sure that at least people are aware that there are certain building code requirements, such as if you're putting in for single family, a new dwelling or a townhome, you have to install make readies for level 2 EV charging. So that just pretty much means that you have a conduit or an easy way to route wire to where the vehicles are most likely to park, and that you have enough capacity on your electric panel. You need anywhere from 40 amps is a realistic guess right now as far as how much power do you need. But you also need wiring that is older than, let's say, 1970, because wires do degrade over time. So you usually need a new conduit and wire run to support this level of power. Pretty much it's a super fancy electric dryer or a nice big piece of equipment in your workshop. So you don't want to overload those wires. Also, if you're doing non-residential, if you're adding 10 or more new parking spaces, then you need to add some EV spaces to go along with that. So that's going to have implications on parking. And because one of those sites needs to be ADA accessible, they almost inevitably end up right next to the ADA spot. So that tends to create congestion in the front of a business or a business complex. And of course, there's all of the path of travel issues associated with that. There will be another code update in 2022, and we can expect there's going to be even more stuff coming then. We're doing a station refresh. We've actually been at this long enough now that our stations have passed their warranty period. And so we've gotten funds from the state to upgrade almost all of the stations, our older stations in the network. We found that ChargePoint has provided a really reliable service, both in their equipment as well as their network operations. So we're switching over entirely to ChargePoint. We prefer to keep an open, competitive network where we invite any manufacturer to have equipment, but we really found that it's tricky to maintain a bunch of different portals and to get all the pricing schemes lined up. So we're trying to create a really familiar user experience so somebody can just charge up and reliably charge their vehicles with minimal confusion. And we found that ChargePoint has really offered head and shoulders opportunities for our customers, and we're customer oriented first, so that's the route we've gone. City Hall is getting scheduled now. And then Katie, now that I know you're in the planning department, I'm going to be bugging you so we can get our permits approved so we can move forward with that. But we do have all the money reserved and we have the equipment sitting in our office. So we're ready to go and get those stations refreshed. It's going to be important because the local cell phone providers are dropping 3G as a network service as of December 31st. So if you do not have 4G for all of your field devices, then you will no longer be accessible over the cell network. We will lose two stations at that point, including Fortuna. So we're going to swap it over to free mode, probably mid-December, until we manage to get that station updated with a 4G cellular modem and new equipment. So it won't go down. It'll be at no cost for a little while. And Ferndale and Rio Dell are already upgraded. Currently, we are also working on a medium duty and heavy duty zero emission vehicle grant. So that's a planning activity where we're going to be looking at all of the basically a Ford F-350 or you folks can tell me all of the truck models, you know, the 3500 or better. I think it's either 8,000 or 10,000 gross vehicle weight curb, where you get into the medium duties. So, but it's also going to be your recycling trucks, your garbage trucks, any of your larger maintenance vehicles, construction equipment, and so on. So how can we get those to shift over to cleaner fuel? The urban areas are doing a lot better here because they have air quality issues that they're trying to address, and also noise. Noise is turning out to be a really big promoter. You don't need a garbage truck clanking through the back alleys at 6 in the morning. You know, if you can have an electric one, it's still going to make noise, but it's significantly quieter. So we have less of a concern of that out here, and our air quality is pretty good. So there's not a lot of match dollars, but we're still taking a shot at figuring out what can we do to clean up our heavy equipment locally. We've got really good support from local agencies. So hopefully we'll get that grant. If we do get it, we'll start work on that around June or July. So if you know anybody who's operating medium and heavy duty equipment that we can help plan how to change their fleets and so on, we would love to talk with them. And we'd love to talk with them anyway, even if we don't get the money, because this is what we do for the community. I don't know if you saw it, but this spring we ran an e-bike rebate. We opened it up, and within 2 weeks, all of our rebates were fully subscribed. E-bikes went off the hook this summer for some reason, and we just hit the timing perfectly. We hope to be able to do this again. We're definitely in a lean year. As you can imagine, people are having a hard time paying their bills, and so we're seeing a higher default rate. That means that it really cuts into our ability to have these local programs. But we're going to, when we can, try to refresh this. The rebates will be less because people are adopting them anyway. So we don't want to fund something that people do already, but we will continue to keep our eyes on this one, because this really helps to get people out of their cars, and you have less metal that you're pushing around to get somebody to do their activity. And people are loving them. I know 6 people myself that have e-bikes, and they are just really excited, and all age groups, but particularly seniors are finding them to really improve their lifestyle and give them both get back into exercise, but also to just be able to get around. Coming soon, meaning tomorrow, you'll see an announcement from us on a local rebate for electric vehicles. We've got $50,000 right now for a rebate for electric vehicles. You need to apply for the state fund and qualify for that. So that simplifies all the paperwork on our side. You'll be able to get up to $500 to get a new EV. Because we're in a rural setting, we really want to start getting a used rebate going, but that's going to be tricky because there are more things you have to look at as far as where did the vehicle come from, its condition, and so on. But for now, we're focusing on new. It'll be up to $500. We're also earmarking $24,000 for people to install electric vehicle chargers in their homes. That'll be announced later this year. And you can combine it with any layer of state and federal incentives that you want. It's going to be out there for a while because right now at the state level, locally, we see an uptake of about 6 rebates a month in Humboldt County. So you can just see in the graph there, there's roughly 6 vehicles a month people apply. COVID, we all fell off a cliff. This date, I didn't include it here, but this little tiny green bar down here is April. So your mileage may vary on uptake, but we expect that this rebate will probably be out there 8 to 12 months, unless spring everybody gets vaccinated and all decide they want to buy an EV, then all bets are off. Enough said on that. Going into other activities, we have our Community Choice Energy program. This is our flagship activity. This is where we purchase power on behalf of 92% of the electricity consumers in Humboldt County. Since we're not for profit, instead of sending any additional revenues to shareholders, for example, we're able to take the funds and then put them into local programs. So everything you've seen on transportation is pretty much funded by that money that's not going to shareholders, but instead it's getting diverted to specifically pay for local programs. So that's a really important part of why we have a community choice energy program, and is a significant benefit to any community that's able to tap into that funding source. And we certainly encourage, you see down here where it says community sourcing, this is just a way for anybody in the community to engage with us and say, these are kinds of things that we'd like to see in our community that specifically relate to greenhouse gas emission reduction and then improving reliable, clean energy in our community. Just some of the ideas that have come out before, or things that we've already been working on, is that we have a feed-in tariff project. That basically says that if you put solar on your rooftop of your business, for example, the utility will buy any excess power that you create at a wholesale rate, which is much, much lower than the retail rate. So it's not really beneficial. We improve that. We offer a much better rate. Excuse me, it's still well below retail, but it's much better than wholesale. So we're going to be expanding that project. And so that's an opportunity for businesses to really start looking at, if they have a really good roof, they can go ahead and put solar. They might even consider battery storage if they have refrigeration, for example, if they have other critical activities that they want to have continue during blackouts, but also be able to just use that rooftop as an asset to sell electricity back to us. And again, you can see the local connection here where the asset is on the local business. The electrons are getting sold into our local network. So everybody wins. We're also building a microgrid out at the airport. That's a 2 megawatt solar field, which is going to be roughly about 5 to 6 acres of solar panels. And there's also a pretty large battery storage system there. The benefit there means that the airport can pretty much operate 24/7 any day of the year. And we have enough battery storage that even if we have a week of storms, it's very likely that we will have sufficient power to maintain full airport operations year round. And also the Coast Guard's out there, and they will be part of that microgrid. So the real benefit there is that unless it's a massive earthquake, we can pretty much, if we have a disaster up here, floods and so on, we will be able to continue to maintain that essential pipeline to bring materials in and medical flights out and so on. So a really important asset to our community. We're starting up a customer demand response storage program, and that's kind of a neat project, excuse me, where people can install storage in their businesses and their homes, and that we will then can send out price signals to let people know, hey, if you would like to shed your load right now, if you'd like to take your business or your home off of the grid for a little while and operate on your battery system, we will offer you favorable pricing, or we'll trade you other days or other times. So it's just a way of kind of shifting load around when things get really expensive on the grid, like during the heat wave event that we saw this summer. And with climate change, we're seeing much more weather volatility. So we can expect more and more of these potential disruptions and or price impacts to all of us. So this is just a way that we can kind of buffer that locally and then get more hardware locally on the ground where it can do good for local businesses and residences, but we also benefit as a broader community. On the demand side management, demand side management basically means everything on the customer side of the power meter. So anything else like the distribution system, the transformers on the poles, that pretty much belongs to the utility, but anything from the meter toward your business is the demand side. Because we demand the electricity. So we got approved as an energy efficiency funding program administrator. This is just a complicated way of saying that the California regulatory body has approved us to spend money, state money, on energy efficiency activities. pretty much what we've been doing with Energy Watch through PG&E for the past 15 years. But now we actually get to go straight to the regulatory body and have dollars designated directly to us, cut out the utility as the middle person, and then have more dollars that we can directly place into our community. So this has been a big win for us. With that said, we're continuing our PG&E Energy Watch partnership because they can reach different parts of the market that we can't. If you look at a big box store, for example, you almost always have to go to corporate headquarters and talk to them rather than go out to a branch office in order to get them to do any energy efficiency work. Excuse me. On the planning side of things, our Repower Humboldt plan is just basically our guiding document on what are the activities that we look at for the next 10, 15, 30 years. We've had a lot of community input on various activities that we do. How do we achieve clean energy and independence for the region? We updated that in 2019. We're also using that information as well as some of the other work we did to help the County of Humboldt with their climate action planning activities. There are state mandates that pretty much say that cities and counties have to figure out how they're going to address climate change through action plans. And so we're feeding into that. And finally, our board approved RCEA to find 100% renewable energy by 2025 for our participating customers. So that's going to keep us on our toes to purchase all of that, but we're well on track to do that. And that's all I have prepared. So we can open it up to questions. I'm here to entertain them. And I know that was a lot.
I have a couple of questions, unless anybody else wants to go first.
Go for it. I'll go after you.
Okay. So let's see. So you were talking about, Governor Newsom with his, no electric vehicles. Does that also include hybrids? Is it electric only, no gas whatsoever? Because I have a hybrid.
Yeah,
So
great question.
All phased out? What's happening?
It's a dream. There is so much inertia around fuel, fossil fuels, if you think about how deeply it reaches into our lives. So it's going to be a long time to try to transition away. So I figure that hybrids are certainly going to play a role in our future. And just because the governor has thrown down the gauntlet on saying, I'm going to ban the sale of new internal combustion engine vehicles, how we get there is a give or take. So, I mean, ideally from a climate perspective, the faster we transition, the better, but we're going to have to transition somehow. And plug-in hybrid vehicles are really crucial to that equation. As you can see for Humboldt County, 60% of the alternative vehicles of the zero energy or heading towards zero emission vehicles, there are plug-ins. So.
And with the charging stations, that we have a few at Open Door and here at City Hall, well, not here, but in City Hall, at City Hall. What kind of costs are associated? Are you looking to expand the network if we had a business or a landlord that was interested?
Absolutely. We've delegated all of our funds for now. And with COVID, we're going to just have to figure out how much money is left on the table. So for me, I'm trying to be pragmatic. I'd love to continue to just really expand as much as we can because we will need that infrastructure. And a lot of charging does happen at home, but for people who live in multifamily situations or apartments, access is going to be tricky and the landlord relationships can be challenging to navigate. So we do want to expand, absolutely. And really, it can take 2 years to site a location and to figure out, work with PG&E to tie into the grid and figure out where do we do the conduit runs, because oftentimes the panel is well away from the parking lot. So we've got to figure out all that planning work, and that takes time. So it's definitely give us a call if somebody is interested and we can start that process. As far as costs, we're estimating that it costs, and it depends on how many ports you put in at any one time. The more ports, the better. But at $16,000 a port, it can get pretty expensive. And we can do a dual port for cheaper than that. But again, it really boils down to where's the circuit panel, where are the ADA parking spots, how flat is the site? And based on that, since we do the operations and maintenance, we want to see pretty good utilization. We don't want to just put hardware in the middle of nowhere where it costs a lot of money and we'd have to drive forever to support it. And it's more prone to vandalism and it gets very light use. Although with that said, we've been very happy to support our Rio Dell, Trinidad, and Willow Creek locations.
Dana, you spoke a little bit about the e-bike rebates. Was it just bikes or was it scooters as well?
Great question. It was just bikes. And the reason for that is that a lot of the municipal street codes has not gelled yet on how scooters can share our surfaces. You know, do they go on the road? Do they go on the sidewalk? What do we do about that? And we didn't want to put the municipalities in an awkward situation where we flooded a bunch of e-scooters out there and now they're battling out where are they allowed to go. San Francisco is kind of suffering through that grief right now. And they actually had an interesting problem where manufacturers of e-scooters just dumped a bunch of product on the street and figured let the customers use them and decide, you know, force the municipalities to start painting the lines a little bit differently on the streets, which they're starting to do. But I think there's a more graceful approach that could be taken with that. And I would certainly encourage your city to start looking at multimodal transit planning and how to create better shared environments for something less than 3,500 pounds.
Dana, I had a quick question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Dana, you mentioned the target was 6,000 electric vehicles by 2025, and currently we have about 1,367 countywide, leaving roughly a little more than 1,000 vehicles every year to be purchased. Is there a program or plans for a program in the future to with dealers to maybe cooperate or have a program with them that they would help either reduce the program or in some manner or their cost of vehicles or in some manner assist in reaching goals?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. And I think the state is really working hard to balance the carrots and sticks so that, you know, they don't want to be punitive and they want the free market to be able to operate well, but at the same time, while motivating all of us toward broader goals. And at the regional level, there's just very little funding available. Certainly our community choice energy program may be one of the few that can bring in dollars that can really help accelerate some of these goals. So we're trying to figure that out, and we do try to match funds with the state wherever possible. But in general, I think we're just going to have to let the market play itself out naturally. The areas that I want to start emphasizing now that electric vehicles have been out in the market since 2012 is really what can we do to start getting used vehicles up here? Because in Humboldt, a lot of vehicles are purchased used. So if we can create an incentive program for that, if we can continue to support residential and small business infrastructure, I think that's really the best way that we can help the market transition. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Hi, is it Dana or Dana?
Dana.
Dana, sorry. My name's Denise Marshall with the McLean Foundation. I was late getting on, so thanks for being here. I had a quick question too on the e-bike. So can residential folks then just contact RCEA for those rebates?
That program was fully subscribed within 2 weeks. So we currently have an electric vehicle rebate that will be announced tomorrow. I have a fluffy white dog, but she's not in the room with me right now. So
This is Samson. He wants to be part of it.
I'm
she's
laughing.
missing out.
I'm laughing because we're having a dog off between Mike, Melissa, and
Yeah.
me.
And then about the the charging stations, we built this facility out here behind Newburgh Park Community Center, which is pretty much shut down from what we had intended it to be. And we're not sure exactly what it'll look like once we are able to reopen. And we talked about a charging station there when we were doing the parking lot, but it was decided now let's put that on later on. And so,
Totally understandable.
And so did you mention this? You said something about 16,000 a port. Are there grants still available out there for?
We just, the Cal EVIP state grant was your best opportunity for that. And it was subscribed within a week of it being announced. So we secured about 300,000 of that, but all of those funds are already committed. We could go ahead and submit another application, but currently there are 800 applications that are backlogged in that particular system. So for our region, so that's the only grant that I know of right now. But we've been pleased to work with the McLean Foundation in the past to do specific projects within your region. So be really happy to do some match funds or come up with some ideas on how to get more charging going and also to operate and maintain those facilities. Parks can work out really well for EV charging because it is a destination that people will tend to hang out at for an hour or two, which is about how much time you need to make it worthwhile to plug in.
So yeah, any conversations that we could have to just kind of continue thinking about it.
Absolutely. And this is the time to do it when you're thinking about new facilities that are going in, or if you want to revitalize a certain community. If you're looking at a particular location, like the old mill site, for example, if there's an opportunity to create some community-centric components there, that it's a really good time to get us involved in that, because we can start helping to talk about where are the power poles, where's the ADA, all the considerations to take into account.
Dana, we did actually just get a LEAP grant, planning grant to do a specific plan for the mill site. So I will keep that in mind once we start getting a little farther into the planning for that.
Yeah, and it's not that much of a draw right now because there are not, there's only 1,400 EVs on the road, but it's going to be a bigger draw down the road, and it's going to start looking less like an amenity and more like an essential service, just like having food, water, and restrooms.
And Dana, if a business puts a charging station in, do they recoup that investment at some point? That $16,000, is that ever recouped?
It depends on how you do it. When we put it in, we usually pay that cost. And so at that point, what the business owner is doing is they're creating the place of business for the charging to happen. Since we're a public agency, we needed to open to the public 24/7, so it cannot exclude anybody. And the site has to maintain good lighting and security to make sure that people are safe while they're charging. So other than that, we generally, our cost, we actually lose a little bit of money. That's why we subsidize the stations right now. Eventually, as they get utilized more, there may be an opportunity for a revenue share. So we establish a memorandum of understanding with anybody that we do work with. And at that point, if we do discover that there are residual or excess revenues that cover all costs, then we could do a revenue share afterwards. But we've never achieved that with any of our sites to date. Generally speaking, I think a business is just going to have to view it as a draw or an attraction, and that it's really helpful to have somebody else keep the equipment running well.
Any other questions for Dana? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us all that information. I appreciate it, as we all do. And if that is it, I will see everybody next Monday. Thanks again, Dana.
Thanks all.
Dana, bye everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Bye now.
Bye.
You know, it's good to see
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.